Hello, my name is Eric Kinsey. I'm in Indianapolis, Indiana, and you're listening to Rulers and Riders, the podcast where creative people talk about what they do and what they ride. Back from hiatus after almost a year and a half, I guess. If you listen to the teaser episode I published on Friday, you can get the whole story about that. But yeah, we're back. So just to kind of recap, I'm going to do just 6 interviews this season, and then I'm going to alternate those with a new feature of the show I call Country Nuggets, where basically I just play you some of my favorite country songs. I like to refer to them as deep cuts and chestnuts, and maybe talk about a little bit of the history and, you know, if I have a personal connection or like of those songs. So this interview with Malorie Paige is going to kick off the new season. And then every Monday we'll go back to doing a weekly show. But a week from today, you'll get a Country Nugget show. So hopefully you'll fall into the rhythm. You'll enjoy it. And if you listen to the teaser episode, you'll understand why I'm doing it that way. So I've been busy. I got a lot of great things planned for this year. Specifically, I'll be doing some new recordings. So just kind of pay attention here, and I'll explain that and kind of give you more details as that evolves. The other thing I really want to emphasize is if you are an old subscriber, thanks for sticking with me and keeping me on your podcast feed. If you are a new subscriber, welcome. Hopefully you have gone back and listened to the old episodes. Either way, please follow me on Instagram, and that is rulers_and _riders. I always appreciate feedback. If there's something I'm doing too much of or not doing enough of, please let me know. The other big thing I really would ask of you guys is please share this podcast with one other person. Just, you know, if you enjoy it, if you find some value in what I'm doing, I'm not asking you for, you know, buy a t-shirt or, you know, subscribe to my Patreon or send me money on PayPal or anything like that. Though those things are certainly nice, all I ask you to do is please just share what I'm doing here. Basically, I just am using this podcast to promote some other creative endeavors that I'm doing, and this is just simply the best, most effective, and enjoyable way for me to do it. Anyone in the upper Midwest who has crossed paths with Malorie Paige might remember her sunny, carefree disposition. I met her a few years ago in Milwaukee at Hoodbush. She was sitting in my unattended lawn chair, and we struck up a conversation. After a few minutes, it was apparent that she was much deeper than her initial appearance would belie. I came to learn that though she resides in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, she originally hails from Portland, Oregon. What struck me about the initial encounter is that regardless of the locale, Malorie is a dedicated aesthete. She dabbles in fashion design, selling vintage clothing, and graphic design, all rooted in an early 70s sensibility. She loves old vans, and like me, owns a vintage Chevy G20. It comes as no surprise that her taste in music also leans toward the same era, specifically progressive heavy rock like Leafhound, which also inspired the name of her Etsy boutique, Shop Freelance Fiend. You can find a link to that store and everything else you need to know about Malorie by following her on her Instagram, and that's Rocka, ROCKA _Rolla, ROLLA _woman. Let's talk to Malorie. Hold on. I gotta get into character here.
Okay.
So today on Rulers and Riders, we're talking to Malorie Paige up in Minnesota. How you doing, Malorie?
I'm doing great.
Awesome. So the last time I saw you was, what was that, like 2 or 3 weeks ago?
Yes.
And you had,
Wisconsin?
yes, and you had a hellish van breakdown.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So, what did they ever come up with a verdict on what happened to your van?
Did they figure out exactly what happened to it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it just had to do with, largely with it being an old vehicle since the 72.
Uh-huh.
But also just kind of some stuff with my mechanic that I'd used here, and I don't know. I think it's a lot of things. I don't know exactly what it is. We've just kind of gotten down to the fact that we're going to have to use a new engine in it, and so that's what I'm working on right now, is getting a rebuilt engine put in it.
Oh my God. Full engine rebuild.
Yes. So I'm squirreling away some money, and I'm just working really hard the next few weeks because I need to have it kind of up and running by July, basically. So
right.
I'll have it before then, but
good. That's crazy. So
it was crazy.
Yeah, that was, and it was just such a funny crossroads.
I know.
So I'll kind of fill in the audience. So I was going up to Wisconsin for my job, and Malorie was coming down from Minnesota, and the plan was we were going to meet in Chicago, suburban Chicago, at Solemn Oath Brewery and go to the White Van art show. And it was a little bit cold that day, so there weren't a lot of people that came out. So I had to go up to Wisconsin to do this delivery. And, we've been in contact, texting or whatever. And she texted me and she's like, oh my God, my van broke down. And I'm like, where are you? And it turned out she was I don't know, half an hour away from where I was in Wisconsin.
I was so lucky.
That was super weird. But, yeah, so I guess it worked out the best that it could. Obviously you got home and got your van to a safe harbor and all that. But
and we still got to go to the art van show, so that was cool, too.
Yeah, and we got to eat barbecue, too, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. So you are originally from Oregon, right?
Yep, I'm from Portland. I grew up there. I moved to the Twin Cities, I think 5.5 years ago.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, 5.5 years ago, and so I've kind of been here ever since, just still trying to acclimate to Midwest culture. I still have not assimilated completely, but I've tried.
Yeah. It's a lot different. Now, how did you? What was your sort of childhood in Portland?
Well, let's see. I don't know. I just had parents that were really encouraged me to be creative. They were both into a lot of music, mostly 70s classic stuff, which is why I'm still kind of super into that. Because I just grew up. My mom was into folk sort of stuff, and my dad was into the rock and roll stuff. So we listened to a lot of music. I'm one of 4 girls, and my parents just kind of we're all super different and just sort of encouraged us to all be the way that we are. And I was always the square peg, as my dad would call me. But he always super encouraged that. He was don't ever change. Stay that way.
Right.
And I'm too stubborn to change that anyway. But yeah, that's just how I am. And so I don't know. I was involved in a lot of stuff. I actually played sports when I was younger.
Really?
And yeah, I'm not really a sporty person now, but I was as a child.
Yeah.
And yeah, so just a lot of, art and music stuff and all that fun kids stuff, and just a lot of things.
Yeah. What sport did you play?
Well, I'm quite tall, so it worked out to play basketball. I played volleyball. I was on the swim team when I was little. I played soccer.
Right.
I think that covered. Oh, I did track and field for a while too, but that was not my jam.
Wow. See, I never would have guessed that you were kind of a jock.
Well, that's the first thing people always say. They're like, "Did you play volleyball or basketball? You're tall." I'm like, "Well, yes, I did."
Yeah.
I was good at rebounding.
Yeah. Well, now it all makes sense. Yeah, I totally get it. Did you have any early artistic expression as a child that your parents recognized? They ever kind of push you into one form of art or expression, one or another?
I wouldn't say one form or another, but there's this story that is very, I don't know, it was like a defining childhood moment in that, where it was my parents, I think I was 7 or 8, and they'd gotten this letter in the mail, and it was from this guitar and music store. It's called Horseshoe Music in Oregon. And they're like, "Dear Malorie," and my parents had opened it because I was a kid, and it's like, "Dear Malorie, we thank you for your submission for the logo for our store, but we actually already have an artist that takes care of all of our graphics. It's our son, and, this and that. But thanks so much for sending that drawing." And my parents were like, "What are these people talking about?" And it was still during the time of Yellow Pages or whatever, or white pages or whatever. And so I looked up music stores, and I found that Horseshoe Music, and I drew this guitar that had I don't remember, it had a horseshoe somewhere on it or something. And I sent it to them without my parents really even knowing that, because I wanted to submit my art for it. And that was and now a lot the design work that I've done, the graphic design work, especially my freelance stuff, has all been music related. I've worked for a couple music merchandise companies. I currently do a little freelancing for one now, and just kind of art posters for shows, and I've done some band logos, but that's just kind of what I've always wanted to do, and pretty much since I was little, I guess.
Yeah.
And I took guitar lessons when I was little, and I was just, I don't know, too much of a moonbeam to commit to that, because I'd go to practice, and the teacher would be like, "You didn't practice this, did you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I did." He's like, "No, you didn't."
Yeah.
So that was kind of why I eventually stopped playing guitar when I was younger.
Yeah. Did you have any formal training in graphic design?
I did. That was my original career path. I went to the Art Institute in Portland, and then I also there's a community college in Portland that has a really good design program. So that's what I had originally done, and then I kind of ran into some obstacles, and I had a lot of life changes at the time, and I started to have this idea, when I was younger too, that I might want to do hair, because, I don't know, I was really into the punk scene and stuff when I was younger, and wanted to do all this crazy shit with my own hair, and I did my friend's hair, and I was like, "This is great," thinking that it was going to be, exactly what I wanted it to be, and I switched. I went to school. I did hair for 2 years. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. And I'd still been freelancing during that time on the side. And I was just like, you know what? It was an expensive mistake to go through all that. But I went back to my original path, which was that.
Yeah.
And so I've just been working on building something that's a practical application that I can make money off of, that can still be my own expression.
Right.
So that's really what I'm working on right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in a previous life, I think I told you this when we were driving back from Wisconsin, I worked in the student loan industry. I used to be a federal contractor and worked in student loans. And it's I would say a large percentage of the people I talked to who had delinquent student loans were people who were refugees from art school, or went to an art school. And it's just amazing how very few of them actually stuck with it or pursued it.
I agree.
Yeah. And it's kind of like the Art School Confidential movie. The dude's if you want to be a great artist, be a great artist. And it's funny. It's to me, it's like either you have it or you don't. You know, it's like no one can teach you how to be creative. Like they can show you some techniques that you can kind of add to your, you know, bag of tricks or whatever. But it's always struck me as like very funny, like people that you know, go to art school and like just don't do anything with it versus like people that go and they learn, maybe they graduate, maybe they don't. They learn a little bit of technique and they can just sort of like take it and run with it.
Exactly.
And
like you can learn the skill set.
yeah,
You got to kind of, you know, have that in your heart.
yeah, it's funny, and it's just like one. It's always struck me as just like really odd that you can, you know, take some. I don't know, some like juggalo dude working at the gas station, you know, like, well, I wanted to be an artist, so I went to art school, and that didn't work out, so now I'm doing this, and I'm like, well, it's not like, you know, learning how to weld or something, dude. It's just like you can't learn it.
Well, I feel like there are a lot of people that I went to school with, and also like the program was kind of formatted to the people that succeeded in the programs were people who were way more into accomplishing tasks or could handle their workload well in school or just basically had like scholastic skills to do that.
Uh-huh.
And it was like the program seemed to reward that much more than actual talent or artistic drive and things like that.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like frustrating and disheartening for me because I was just like, you know, I mean, not to compare myself to other people in like a negative way, but I'd just be like, this girl, she just, her shit's basic. And I was just like, but she's really good at getting her shit in on time,
Uh-huh.
and she can focus hard enough to, you know, because I'm very much ADHD, and everything's been a struggle for me in school, if any
Right.
kind.
Right.
And, you know, you had these people who could really do that and focus, but they weren't really artistic at heart. Like, they didn't have that kind of passion that you're talking about.
Yeah. It's super strange. When I graduated from high school, like I did not want to go to college at all because my dad was kind of strict, so I just wanted to have like some freedom. And after about 6 months of being on my own, I was like, man, this really sucks, like having to get up and go to work every day, and it's getting really cold.
Yeah.
So I ended up going to college in Ball State in Muncie, Indiana. And I thought, you know, like I'd, you know, been really into photography in high school. I was like, oh, I'll go to art school. That'll be a good idea. And I had to take a lot of like basic foundation classes. And it just was like the weirdest collection of people. Like in my mind, I had some like, you know, conception of like going to art school. Like everyone would be wearing like a beret and sunglasses and like a striped shirt and playing bongos in the hall or something. And it just like was not like that at all. And I remember this lady. She was some like local lady. She's probably 40, you know, but she seemed like super old to me at the time. And she told me, she's like, I'm taking these classes because I go to like, you know, fairs and, you know, like little city festivals in the fall, and I like to paint saw blades and I sell them. And she
Were they cool saw blades, or was it really like...
I mean, they were like saw blades with like, you know, covered bridges and like an owl or a mushroom or something. But that was her whole thing. She was just like, yeah, I'm gonna learn how to do that better so I can make more money selling saw blades or something. It was just so bizarre, so funny. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. You could really kind of tell, even back then, you know, like the people who dress like, you know, very like in a stylish, eccentric fashion, and were just like super passionate about their art, and they stood out, and they, you know, they looked like an artist, and that to me, it was just so rare, just like that real talent, like that sort of like rounded self-expression. Just not very many people seem to have that in like a formal classroom setting.
Well, and I refer to it, I mean, it's a term that I did not make up, but the term art fag is like
Yeah.
what I describe myself as, and it's like,
Sure.
I mean that in the most positive best way, but that
Sure.
is definitely what I am, and that just totally describes just how I am and how I've always been and how I'm always going to be. And
Yeah.
what you're talking about there, it's kind of being the person you are.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny too because it's like I just remember like being like a teenager and like getting dressed to go out for the day or whatever, and I'd kind of like style my clothes or whatever, like I was a punk rocker
Yeah.
kid, and like people would always like give me grief about it, and I didn't even like think about it, like that's just who I was, and I don't know it. Do you find like just like a hard time like recognizing like other like creative people in your sort of daily life, or does that ever like kind of weird you out, or is it like a joyous thing when you find somebody who's actually like a truly purely like expressive person?
You trying to get in the building? Okay. Sorry.
That's okay. I just went on like a 2-minute, long winding question. Some dude's trying to get in your building.
Sorry, I'm trying to get back on track.
That's okay. Did he get in?
Yes. Also, he was kind of hot, so sorry, go.
No, that's okay. No, it's totally fine.
You mean like, so are you asking like, is it easy for me to kind of like be my own kind? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, like, I just this is kind of something we talked about when we were driving back from Wisconsin, but one of my little pet peeves is like it's just like when you go to like a rock show or like a van show or an art show or a chopper show or whatever whatever we're into. It seems like you see a lot of people that like kind of play the part or put on the costume, but it's like really hard to find people who are like sincere appreciators.
Yeah, and I think that, I don't remember if we talked about it exactly, but I mean, from what I've heard from you, and I know for sure for myself, I don't know how to say this without sounding awful, but
That's okay.
I can see right through people who are not legitimately into the things that they pretend to be.
Yeah.
It's kind of a radar that I have.
Yeah.
And I think it has to do with the fact that, like, since I am legitimately into the things I'm in and I'm so passionate about it, like,
Right.
you can kind of pick up on that same, like, passion for things that other people have.
Yeah.
And there's definitely an easy formula for people to just kind of wear certain things or like certain things or project a certain image on their social media, but I can see through that.
Yeah. I call that the mile wide and inch deep phenomenon of people.
Yes, exactly.
And I mean, like, I don't know, like, I don't know if you're this way, but like, I get like real super into like one thing, and it could vary from like, one, like, this is just how weird my brain is. So like the last couple days, I've been like really obsessed with this like old, like, 30s jazz guitar player, like Eddie Lang. Like I've liked him for a long time, but just like the last couple days I've been listening to his music a lot. I don't really know why. And then like last week it was Clarence White, this like 70s country rock guitar player or whatever. And I don't know why, like, I get on those kicks of just like, really getting into one thing. But when I get a chance to like talk to somebody else who's like into that, I get like really super excited, and like I talk a lot, and I get like real just like super animated. But then like the flip side of that is like the heartbreak of like somebody's like, oh yeah, I like Clarence White, and then you start like talking to them about like, you know, like all these like weird like little nerdy facts you've gleaned from your obsessiveness, and they're like, yeah, he was in the Birds, wasn't he? You know, like they just say like the most like mundane fact about, you know, whatever you're into, and I don't know, it's kind of like a weird like kind of form of heart. Yeah, totally a letdown. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely know that feeling.
Yeah. So, what kind of led up to you moving from Portland to the Twin Cities?
Well, okay, so I'd grown up there, and like, you know, I'm really close to my family, and they're all either up in Oregon, like my immediate family in Oregon, and then all my extended family lives in the Bay Area, which is where both my parents are from.
Right.
And a lot of it was just like really, I stayed there because I really wanted to be close to my family.
Right.
And I tried a few times in my younger years to not move to, but I looked into the idea of moving into like, you know, different cities and a couple places. And I really just like, you know, I was so young and like really didn't want to leave my parents.
Uh-huh.
And so I sort of stuck around there. I mean, in addition to that, like in Portland at the time, things were still very like easy and cushy, and you could, you know, you didn't have to really make a lot of money to get by, and so it was just out of comfort. I sort of like lingered there, but at the same time, I was sort of getting a little bit like kind of tired of Portland, and it was right at the beginning of it, sort of what I would call kind of like kind of going downhill. And what I mean by that is just that it became very different, very expensive. It because it became expensive, it pushed a lot of the you know, things out of it that kind of made it the unique, cool place it was. So I was already kind of looking out for, you know, where's my next destination going to be, and I still hadn't figured it out, but my oldest sister, she had moved to Minneapolis, I think like 10 years ago. And she was over here, and she met her now husband, and they have kids now and stuff. So she knew that I kind of wanted to. I was in a place in my life where I definitely, like it was first just an idea to get out of there, but then I definitely was at a crossroads in my life where I just like needed to. Like, I needed a new beginning in my life. I needed a new sort of, like, focus and all that kind of stuff. So, she and her husband were like, hey, because they had this big cool house and with, like, a big finished basement that they weren't going to, you know, really use. And they were just like, hey, well, why don't you, if you want to come over here, you know, come stay with us so you get on your feet and find your own place. And, you know, and just the number one thing was the appeal of, like, having family. And somebody that I, you know, because I wanted to be by family in some way. Right. And so it was, I'd already been looking into going to Aveda in Portland, which they have one there. But I sort of, everything aligned really nicely. And, like, my sister had the place for me here, and it was a city that, like, I visited, you know, the summer before. In the summer, not the winter. In the summer. And then, you know, there's this idea of like, oh, the winter is going to be hard, but I'll get through it, sort of thing. Right. So I had liked it a lot, and then everything, like, I had just gotten out of like a bad relationship, and I was like kind of getting out of a lease at a place I was at, and I just got the idea in my head, and then I was like, well, I'm going to apply to go to the Aveda here in the Twin Cities, and which was the beginning of my, like, short-lived hair career. So I came over here, and then my plan was to go right back to Portland after I graduated, but there's something about here that's, like, people joke about it, but it's true about being kind of a vortex, and once you get over here, it is kind of difficult to, like, get out of here. Like, I've, you know, toyed with the idea of getting out of here before a couple times, and it never worked. Or, like, something happens or comes up, and so it was supposed to be temporary, and then I just ended up staying here. Right. And then I'm here now. That's pretty much my story.
Yeah. What did you think about your first Minnesota winter?
Well, the two winters, my first two winters here were the harshest that they've had in 6 years.
Oh, shit.
Like this winter dragged on, which is what made it extra, just absolutely terrible for me, especially, and everyone that I knew. But the first two winters were like way below zero. Like with the wind chill, would be like 35 below, and like it took me about 3 winters to finally accept the fact that I'd have to wear one of those like kind of longer puffy coats.
Yeah.
Because I'm always cold, so I don't know why I moved here. But the first 2 winters, I remember like there was this like little vintage Wrangler denim jacket that was like my favorite, which still have. But at the time, like I decided that if I just layered really good, that I'd be just fine in that weather. So I'd have like a long sleeve and a hoodie, and then the jacket, and then I'd have like a scarf and a hat. And it was just like so stupid. Like I don't know why I thought that would work, but it took me probably 3 winters to like acclimate and really figure out. Well, by acclimate, I just mean really figure out what you should wear.
Yeah.
To survive here.
Yeah.
So it was just like absolute hell when I first. It still is hell. I'm just saying, like, it was just a total shock. Even though I expected it,
Yeah.
But.
Well, so where I go for work every day is, like, right at the Indiana-Michigan border. And you still get some, like, lake effect winds. So it gets, like, pretty cold, like, up north. And it's sometimes in the winter, it's, like, as much as, like, a 20 or 25 degree difference from where I live in Indianapolis. And there would be days when I would get so depressed because I'd have to put on there was just like this huge production of like, I got to put on long johns, I got to put on heavy socks, I got to put on sweatpants, I got to put on Carhartts, I got to put on a jacket, I got to put on a hoodie, like all this stuff. And I think like one day I counted, I was wearing like 12 items of clothing at one time or something. I mean, it was just like completely.
Like that little boy in Christmas Story?
Yes, exactly. But luckily for like this part of the Midwest, it's like that part of the winter only lasts like 2 or 3 weeks max, maybe a month, I guess the most. But like I just cannot imagine going from like the year-round mild climate of Portland to just basically going to like the most brutal part of.
God, it was like. But I felt like I don't even know like the way to describe it. Like I felt sort of, like badass sort of, because I was just like, it's the best way to describe it, or it was like, I felt like it was a huge accomplishment when I would make it through one of those winters, especially because I wasn't used to it. So right. I would just feel like tough shit, like after, I got through one of those, and I was like, oh, that's so cool, and then, but I don't know, it like put me in survival mode almost during that time. Right. Like if you're like stranded in a tundra somewhere and you had to like, because I just had to get used to it, and it's like a wet cold where I come from, which actually can be more uncomfortable for me than the dry cold here. Sure. So the dry cold was kind of a nice-ish change, but it's just, it's not even the temperature, it's just how everything changes, and basically like, just, you can't do, I'm exaggerating, but you can't do anything. Like, I can't drive my van, I can't, like, I'm just going to be honest, it's going to sound so dumb, but it's like, I can't wear any of my cute clothes. Uh-huh. Like, on top of that, it's just like, the winter is just like, everything that makes me happy or is like a way to express myself is like impeded by it. Like, fashion is self-expression, and I do think it's like a form, it's like being creative about like who you are, and like having that taken away with not being able to drive my van, and in the winter when it gets bad here, it's like every single tour, because I go to a lot of shows, every tours around this area. So there's a pretty good, I'm just like, it's just like such a bummer, and it's like, I would go from, seeing like 6 shows a month, maybe even more than that sometimes, to being lucky if like one band was brave enough to come through here.
Yeah.
And that was just like the hardest thing too, because that's a lot of what keeps me happy, and like music is like the most important thing to me pretty much. And you know, it's like you can sit at home and listen to records in your, you know, little apartment, but like nobody wants to go out and do anything. You don't really want to do anything. If you go out there, it's like you said, you have to be like totally bundled up, and it's just like scary driving around. It's dangerous. It's just like, oh, it's just awful. I can't do it again this year. I can't. Like, I really like this. I'm like, this is the year.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
the vortex.
Yeah. And the thing, and there's a few cities I've noticed this with, but there's, so like, you know, where I live in Indiana, it's like, you know, Indiana's a small state, but there's like, you go like 10 minutes and you're like in a new like little town or city or whatever. It's like there's not a lot of like, you know, wide open spaces. I mean, you could be in like a rural area, but it's like if you drink like a, you know, a Coke or whatever, and you like have to go to the bathroom like 10 minutes later, you're like, oh, I know there's a gas station like right here. Whereas like there's some places like, you know, Minnesota being one, where it's like, there's nowhere to stop, dude. Like, you're going to have to pee your pants or whatever. I mean, it's just like a real feeling of isolation there, it seems like. And I don't know, maybe that's why the Twin Cities have had like a historically like kind of really vibrant, you know, homegrown music scene. Because
nobody else really wants to come here.
Yeah, there's just nobody else goes there, and there's nothing else to do in the winter but sit inside and play guitar or whatever.
Well, everybody just drinks here, and you know, like I enjoy doing that in moderation. I've never been one to like overdo it, but it's part of the culture here to overdo it. Like that's what people do in the winter because it's depressing and there's nothing to do. So, like their winter sport is drinking, like. Or curling or whatever, you know, that sport is. But, like, those are the two big things people are into here.
Yeah. I've always, like, I don't know, I've never, like, understood, maybe it's my Southern heritage, but I've never understood people that like to do winter sports, like winter activities. Like, people that, like, willingly go out in the cold and spend, you know, long...
People here love it. They, like, love... Like, I talk to people who are like, I just love winter, and I just love doing all these things, and, you know, for a while here, I had a boyfriend that, like, wanted to go and do stuff in the snow all the time. Like, let's go hike in the woods, and let's go, and it's like, that's cool, like, I really like doing that stuff in the summer. I'm way into outdoor stuff, but when I'm absolutely miserable in the cold, it was, like, the last thing I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Go out there and, you know.
Yeah. I mean, God love those people that like to do that kind of stuff. But I'm not one of them.
Yeah, not my jam.
No, not my jam at all. So, when you got to Minnesota, what did you? I know you said you went to Aveda for a little bit, but what kind of led you to start doing freelance fiend stuff?
To do what? I'm sorry.
What led you to do start doing freelance fiend?
Okay, so, let's see. Well, so even, I mean, I have to tell a little backstory about that, is for the past probably like 12 years or so, maybe even more, I had always been into doing like, you know, this, like I've had a few stores on Etsy, and when I was younger, I had sort of like, the stuff was more like punk rock, like metal.
Right.
Based sort of stuff, and I had some like little sort of DIY punk store things, and then I transitioned over into, for a while I had like a pretty successful like store where I was like ordering like double XL shirts from a distributor and then making them into these like little like dresses sort of things, like a tank top dress.
Yeah.
And girls were like super into it, and I had all these like super cool bands and all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
So I had a lot of stuff that I did, trial and error stuff with, that it was just sort of, doing what made me happy to make like extra money, basically.
Uh-huh.
And that kind of rolled into about like 10 years ago or so. I started getting into selling vintage online. And around that time, I was still kind of like deciding if I was going to commit to having like a job, after a company where I'd be working for someone else. But I just like really knew, like, you're kind of talking about not necessarily, like, knowing that you didn't want like a boring job, or like college wasn't appealing and things like that. But
Right.
it kind of all culminated at once, where I was like, I know I don't want a job that's going to be working for someone else, for a company where, like, I do get to have some of my creativity into it, but it's going to be somebody telling me, exactly what I have to do, and, following rules, which I don't like doing. And so it was kind of all those things came together, and along with selling of the vintage, which is what I've really always been passionate about doing, because that's kind of, the fashion I'm into and the culture. And I sort of was like, you know what, there has to be a way that I can, make something that's basically working for myself, that I know will sell. And so it's been a very slow-moving process, because I've been generating everything on my own and the funds to do all that. But just trying to make this into something like a brand that has like a merchandise line that, goes hand in hand with the vintage stuff, and, hopefully eventually just transitioning over completely into the brand itself, and not having to, because there's a lot of hustle involved in the vintage stuff, and
Right.
it's a lot easier just to, so like kind of like a master plan with everything, but it was just a lot of different things that fed into that. And then I really have had just like a lot of milestones, like in my artistic like development, where I don't know how to describe it, just where you can feel that you're learning more and kind of advancing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, these things that used to be more difficult for me, as far as like graphic design and design in general, even the Adobe program, which it like clicked, and I was like, oh my god, this is so exciting. And then, like my designs would develop more from there, and all that kind of stuff. So it's just sort of like, I have a plan, but I'm still, making up as I go, sort of thing.
Yeah. So I noticed when I looked at the website, are you still revamping it?
Well, so here's the thing, is that, gosh, I'm awful at being direct with answers, but I'll tell you like a Reader's Digest version, if I can. But basically, I launched my store last year around the same time that I bought my first van. And I saved a chunk of cash to get it. I had a small loan that was only for like $1,500 or something for the remaining balance. But my timing was so poor, because my day job that funds most of my endeavors is like, I'm a server at a restaurant here in St. Paul, and we hit a huge wall at this time of year, which just completely slows down. Like, we make a shit ton of money in the fall and the winter,
right?
But when it gets nice, people tend to want to be outdoors more, and sitting on a cool patio, which we don't have at the place, and so our income like dwindles down to like a third of what it is in the winter.
Right.
So the timing of like buying my van and things slowing down and having that last chunk I needed to pay off for it, it was just like put me in like scary red for a while. Like, I had to just save everything that I had. So that really like impacted like a lot of things as far as like my business plans went, and then still was kind of rebounding for things like that, and I planned everything kind of in phases. So my first phase was supposed to be easy and low cost, and that all worked out the way it was supposed to, but I've been waiting for my next milestone to be able to like push forward into what I want to do now. So right when I was like starting to get all of that in motion, I took my site down. Like, I'm still like paying for it right now, but I have sort of an away message on there. But what happened kind of simultaneously is I'm making these plans to do like a little like freelance teen summer tour.
Uh-huh.
And the details of that alone mixed with like, you know, getting all the funds together that I can to get my merchandise printed and get everything, you know, mapped out of where I'm going to be, what days, what month, and figuring out like where my home base is going to be, and like all those things has really affected what's going to happen to the point where I'm putting a lot of my effort into my summer tour,
Uh-huh.
which I do plan to get it back up online, but it might just have to be more of a like a pop-up shop for the summer. I don't, you know, I'm trying to figure that part out.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah.
So, but I don't know. I think it'd be kind of like fun to do it as like a live thing for the summer and, you know, be like a real human being
Right.
and like meet the people that buy my things and, you know, party and have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like, that's like always sort of like the like seesaw I have in my brain of like, you know, I feel like I have all these like really cool ideas that I get fired up about, but then it's like, but those take money, and I need like, you know, collaborators, you know, and I don't want to just like collaborate with anybody. Like I want, you know, I want the people to be cool and you know, and I mean like even like with the podcast, I mean I think the last interview I did was like June of last year, so almost a year ago. And I kind of like took the summer off. I kept thinking like, oh, I'll take a month off, or I'll take, you know, while my daughter's out of school, I'll take that off. And then it just like stretched into the fall, and then I started dating my girlfriend, and so
and
on.
Next thing you know, it's been like months and months.
It's been, yeah, and then it's been a year, and then I'm, you know, I'm sitting here talking to you, and it's like, you know, you're going to be like the premiere episode of my show for the new year, but
Well, that's awesome.
yeah, but I mean, but I guess what I was going to say is like, when you have the vision and you have that sort of like determination, it always works out, you know, like if you just like keep your eye on the prize, like it always, things always have this like odd way of working out, it seems like.
Definitely, and I'm very driven by nature in that, I mean, a lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm just like very stubborn.
Yeah.
And I'm impulsive, and when I get an idea, I'm just like, I have to do that. I'm not going to not do it. And so but I ran into a lot of the same issues that you're talking about, where you're just like, oh, what about all these logistics, and what about this and that? And that totally, you know, I'll add to what I was saying, that totally slowed me down for a lot of things, because I have all these ideas, and then I get caught up in the, well, how am I going to make that happen?
Right.
But I had this turning point probably like 4 months ago, where I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to get all this planned out, and I'm going to, you know, get designs ready, get this plan ready, and then I'm going to worry about those details after.
Right.
Which, it was so weird, because I'm very, like, overly analytical and, like, really in touch with my own thoughts and, you know, everything. But it was like, I don't know why I didn't realize that, because of the way that I am, that makes total sense, because then it's like you have all those things planned out, and then all you have to do is, like, use the drive to come up with the money to, and it's not been easy, but I'm saying, like, you know, I've managed to squirrel away and fund things and make things happen because I have the other 75% of it planned.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I never did before, but now that's how I do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't you find that like a lot more satisfying part of the process?
Yeah, because it's just, well, I mean, on a side note, like, my parents when I was growing up were just very, like, realist with me, and they were so, like, practical about, like, how things work, and they would just be looking out for me, and they'd be like, you know, that just doesn't sound like a very solid idea. You know, not like my artistic ideas, but, like, if I wanted to do certain things, and they'd be like, I don't know, you know, so they kind of, like, unintentionally, like, held me back from a lot of, held me back from realizing that, like, for me personally, that I really can make anything happen. And if it's is unrealistic, that doesn't stop me. Like,
Yeah.
so finally one day I, like, broke away from that, and I was like, holy shit. I was like, I can do anything that I want to do, as, like, funny and cliche as that sounds.
Yeah.
But, like, you know, like, my mom recently, her and I even had a discussion, like, after all the stuff happened with my van, and, you know, she was pretty pleased with the fact that, you know, I didn't just, like, I found my way out of Wisconsin, and you helped me do that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that I didn't just crumble and be like, you know, what am I going to do? It's like she figured out finally, after all these years, that I really can, you know, get through anything, find my way out of anything, power through anything, like, make anything happen because of just the nature of the way I am. And she finally, like, recognized that, and I was so excited. She was just like, you know, you really just, I finally realized you're just very resourceful, and, you know, you are driven and all these things, and I don't feel like I need to worry about you. And I was like, oh my God, okay, light bulb, seriously, like, finally.
Yeah.
But her recognizing that, like, extra boosted that for me. I was like, okay, Mom's on board, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like,
That's pretty great. That's pretty awesome.
yeah, it was.
So, you thinking everything's going to come together for the summer tour?
Yes. So right now, I had to make some sacrifices over the next few months or so. Like, I was gonna, like, Captain Beyond is playing a show. They're, like, doing some sort of reunion show in Austin this weekend, and I bought my ticket for the show months ago, and I just can't go right now because I have to put all of my money into getting my engine rebuilt. Because that's, like, paramount right now. And it's not just because I need to have a cool van. It's because I need to have transportation to where I'm going. I need to be able to carry all my merchandise. I need to, you know, I'm going to be sleeping in it sometimes. And it's just, like, I can't just have somebody be like, here's a Honda Civic, go do all that. Like, you know, and my heart and soul's been put into that van. And that van's, like, totally a part of me now. And it's like, I have to, that's where everything has to go. So it's impacted a lot of things. Like, I've had to sacrifice a lot of stuff, including, like, I was going to quit my day job at the end of this month, and I was going to be moving to, you know, a new spot when I just moved out of my old spot a couple weeks ago, and now it's just, like, I'm having to do all these, like, changes and temporary plans and all those kinds of things, but it's like, I'm not going to let that get me down. I'm just going to roll with it because I have to make that stuff happen this summer. Like, that's, like, all part of my plan. Like, I have to, you know. So it's on.
Yeah, and and you just kind of have to keep chugging along. Like, you know, like, you might. What I find is, like, my plans might slow down and speed up at various times, but as long as I'm still moving closer toward my goal, like, that's allowed me to not worry. Whereas, like, I used to get, like, really overwhelmed with anxiety of, like, not doing enough.
Same.
Yeah, and now I'm just like, as long as I'm still heading toward my goal, like, as long as it takes is as long as it takes, and I can't, you know, worry myself sick or, you know, screw up my peace of mind, you know, worrying about it. So I don't.
Well, and there really is, like, I know there's a lot of people that don't believe this, but if you really just, like, trust that the universe is going to, like, take care of you and that things are going to work out the way that you want them to, if you really, really, really believe that, then, or you can just stay chill enough to keep on that track. Like, seriously, you know, like, I have a lot of bad luck, but I also have a lot of really, really good luck. And the reason why the good stuff happens is because I totally just, like, I don't want the bad luck to totally get me down, and I just sort of, like, stay afloat and just believe that something great's going to happen, and it always works out. It always does.
It does. It's the craziest thing. It's like The Secret or the Power of Attraction or Power of Positive Thinking, like, however whatever label you want to put on it, like Divine Providence, whatever. But it does, and, like, it's just, like, the strangest thing. And I feel like, too, like, creative people are probably the most in tune with that. Like, I feel like people who have these, like, you know, kind of grandiose visions of, you know, creating something unique and, you know, like a whole new world for themselves in their mind or whatever. It seems like those are the kind of people who, like, understand it the best. You know, like, if you get some, like, idea to do something and you just, like, keep working toward it and, keep thinking about it, it just magically happens through, like, hard work and perseverance, and you know, things always seem to just fall into place. It's really weird.
Well, and I think also because people who are like-minded, you know, like you and I are, that they don't really adhere to a lot of regular thoughts or, you know, ways that people do things. So they're kind of already used to, like, not fitting into a certain, you know, like the square peg thing I was talking about. Like,
yeah,
you know, I don't, you know, I fit into a whole different kind of whatever. And so I'm just not very used to trying to do things conventionally. So,
no,
but yeah.
I used to have this, like, years ago. I had this like, I lived in this band house. So, like, my two roommates was, like, a 3-piece band. So, like, 2 guitar players and a drummer, no bass player. And we had one bathroom. We each had our own room, which was pretty cool. And our rent was, like, ridiculous. It was like $200 a month or something. It was just total crap piece of crap house. But we had this, like, little, like, you know, page out of a book, you know, like, stuck on the bathroom wall. And I think about it a lot. And it said something like, be practical at your job so you can be free in your creative life.
I like that.
I was like, yeah, exactly.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, I have a super practical regular day job, but I definitely, just by committing to that job, I've become, like, so much, like, ridiculously productive with, like, you know, music, lately music, but I mean other endeavors I work on too. So yeah.
Yeah, well, because that can be like your escape in your creative endeavor, and even if you're not going to necessarily make that your, you know, career or your day job or anything like that, like, still, it makes you appreciate that so much more. But you know, when you're not working, that you get to do those kinds of things, and to, like, have money from your job to be able to do those things. Which is, well, it's been hard for me to break out of my industry, the service industry, because, you know, I've made good money, and that's how I funded some of my things, and I'm kind of getting to the point now where I have to sort of take a leap right now and, you know, be a little uncomfortable for a while so I can try to transition over, and, you know, it's been slowed down a lot with the things that have, like, come up and expenses, but I just did, you know, the best I could, and I said, okay, instead of, like, quitting my job, I'm going to cut my schedule in half.
Right.
And I had to do that too because I needed people to go to these event shows on the weekends this summer, and I would not be able to do that with my schedule. I missed out on a lot last summer.
Yeah.
I did some local pop-ups, and that's about it. I didn't go anywhere out of state.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, unless, you know, you're going to have a family, I mean, that's really what life is about. It's about experiences and people and seeing new things and, like, getting to know yourself. And, you know, and if you don't make time for that, you're going to kind of slowly die inside and, you know, be miserable and complacent. And that's just never been something I've been very good at personally.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah.
Well, and I had this realization recently too, where it's like, you know, I've, like, never been married. I don't have kids, and the thing is that it seems that everybody has one thing, or maybe even more than one thing, that's, like, paramount. That's the thing that they would sacrifice for. And any kind of sacrifice in my mind is completely, you know, equal. But I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know, these, you know, financial sacrifices or whatever I need to make right now, I'm like, my band or my business, which kind of go hand in hand right now, like, that's what I'm going to sacrifice for. Like, I don't have a child. I'm not in a marriage. Like, you know, maybe I will one day, but right now, it's like, well, shit, I feel okay about doing, you know, putting everything into this because that's my thing right now.
Yeah, and it's gonna lead you to something else. If like that's not the right thing, it's going to lead you to what is the right thing or what's a better thing. You know, like it's. Yeah. I used to think of it as like you're on an island and you get in a life raft and you like, you know, get on a ship and that ship takes you to like another island and then you know, it's like a series of destinations and sometimes we forget that like there's that necessary like mode of transport in between and it's really important to have you know, metaphorically or, you know, literally a mode of transport that's reliable that can get you from point A to point B.
Yes, and I haven't actually thought about it in terms of the way that you just described it. But it's one of those things where when you said that, I'm just like, yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And not getting caught up in what that transport might be in between the two places. Yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
I, like, you know, there's, you know, like, maybe one person, I could be vague and say two, but it's really just one person in my life that I'm not going to be specific about, but this person, like, was being very hard on me about the fact that, you know, my plan wasn't going exactly the way that it was supposed to, and kind of, like, putting me down about it a little bit, and sort of discouraged me for a minute, and then I was like, I have to stop listening to that person, and fuck them, and I have to just focus on, like, what I'm going to do to rebound from, you know, my short, I mean, like, you know, from, like, what's going on right now, and getting through it and not letting anybody else put more pressure on me because I'm putting enough pressure on myself.
Right.
And after I just sort of, like, eased up on, like, letting anybody else pressure me or have so much pressure on myself, I was just like, I'm just going to ride this wave, and I'm going to see what happens. And at least it's not negative 35 out because that wave was not so easy to ride in the winter when it was miserable here.
Yeah.
It was hard.
Yeah. I can't imagine. Well, my sincere hope for you is that you get the van back together, you embark upon your tour, and that you find, you know, like a new, like, Shangri-La where you can kind of, like, you know, reestablish your roots and kind of be happy for a little while. Because, I mean, I don't know. You're like way too much of a free spirit to be, like, locked in a giant ice castle in Minnesota.
Exactly. I'm a moonbeam.
Yes, you are. All right. Well, hey, thanks a lot for talking to me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Yeah, that was fun, and I totally appreciate that.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll see you sometime this summer.
You will, on the tour.
And that was my talk with Malorie Paige. Don't forget to follow her on Instagram, and that handle again is Rocka, ROCKA _ Rolla, ROLLA _ woman. And from there you can find a link to her Etsy store. That's going to about do it for this episode of Rulers and Riders. Please, I will become an extremely huge pain in the ass about this. Spread the word about this podcast. That's all I'm asking of you. It's free. I put some work into it. Just tell a friend. Tell somebody who might be a creative person who wants to hear about the process of other creative people. If you find something cool in the work of the people I talk to, maybe spread that to somebody who might enjoy their work and say, oh yeah, by the way, you can listen to a podcast interview with him or her at Rulers and Riders. And just please help me spread the word. It's really important to me. And I would appreciate it. If y'all still want to buy like t-shirts and stuff, I still have a limited supply of those. Let me know in the Instagram comments on the show. Let me know if that's something you're still interested in. I'm probably just going to do like a blowout and get rid of the ones I still have. And I don't know, you want to hear about like my never-ending garage projects? My shovel head's done. Still need to do a little tuning stuff on it, but it's done. As soon as the weather breaks here in the Midwest, I'll be riding that bad boy around until it breaks down, and then I'll fix that, and then, you know, the never-ending cycle of having a chopper. I bought a like a Evo Sportster to have as a backup bike, but I need to finish wiring that. Hopefully that's not going to be too complicated. Have I mentioned that I'm colorblind, and that color-coded wiring is a special kind of hell for me? So yeah, I got that to deal with. And then I'm going to be welding in some new patch panels for my 78 Chevy van. That's pretty much all I'm going to do to that before I start the interior, and definitely later on probably do a little engine work to that, but mainly just want to get the body straight and get the interior done so I can enjoy that this summer. Next week I'll be traveling to Texas to go visit my girlfriend for Valentine's Day and doing, you know, romantic couple stuff, you know, because I love her. She's pretty great. Anything else? Oh yeah, music stuff, that's coming, but I'm going to kind of keep that under my hat for right now. But other than that, that's kind of about where I am. As always, thanks for listening to Rulers and Riders. I appreciate it. And I'll see you down the road. Take care.